Hello, YouTube. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into Kamala Harris's platform. So I'm just going to do my analysis of some of the proposals, whether they're good ideas, bad ideas, that sort of thing. I really don't have a dog in the race. I'm not a fan of Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. I wasn't a fan of Trump. So I do consider myself pretty much neutral here. Maybe slightly Trump biased, but honestly, I'm not a big fan of him. So I do consider myself more on the right, but I don't really think that Trump is like a fiscal conservative by any means. He certainly didn't govern that way during his first term. So I think it's pretty much up in the air, and I just want to evaluate the platform here. So the first thing on Kamala Harris's platform is cut taxes for middle class families. Sounds pretty good. The details are she wants to expand the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. This is good and bad because the problem I have with it is that it's a refundable tax credit, which means even if you're not paying any taxes, you're still going to get money from the government. So that becomes less of a tax credit and more of a subsidy. There is a bit of a problem because there exists a welfare class, people that don't work but live off government benefits, and there's sort of an unholy alliance between extreme left politicians, socialist politicians, and the welfare class. The leftists pledge to expand their benefits, and in return, they receive the political support of these people. It's not really fair to pay people not to work, to tax working people in order to finance laziness and sloth. And that's the problem with the child tax credit, and to some degree the earned income tax credit, is that people who aren't working very much could get a lot of money from this. So I'm definitely in favor of cutting taxes for middle class families. A better way might be to simply reduce the income tax rate. Now, overall, though, I'm not necessarily entirely opposed. What I'd like to do is make these tax credits non-refundable. That way, if you're not paying taxes, you don't get any money. It only reduces your tax burden. But even still, I think it would be better to have something a little more broad-based. This is really just reducing the tax burden for lower-income individuals. And the problem is that high-income individuals are already paying almost all of the tax burden. So they're the ones really that you get some relief. You risk increasing the proportion of net tax consumers to net tax payers. And that's problematic in my view because you're encouraging parasitism, you're encouraging politically, you're encouraging a large group of people now to support these socialist wealth redistribution policies. Now, so the second part of the platform is make rent more affordable and home ownership more attainable. It always sounds good. The titles always sound good. She passed a $20 billion bailout for people facing foreclosure. And so the plan here is we'll provide first-time home buyers with up to $25,000 to help with their down payment. I'd be very interested to see the details on that. It does not sound like a good idea. Part of the problem is when you create this artificial demand in the form of $25,000 subsidy to home buyers for the down payment. That's gonna drive up the price because, like, that represents a lot of purchasing power. Like the deposit is like 5 or 10% of the property value, up to 20%, something like that. So, like if that's an additional, say 25,000 on top of 25,000 they have, and that's 5%, 10%. Let's say 10%. That's 500,000 now in terms of purchasing power towards buying a home. So I think there could be some definite unintended consequences there, driving up home prices. And it does not sound like a great idea to me. I mean, is this a grant? Are they giving that money away? Is it a loan? What's the deal? They don't really go into the specifics just on the platform. I'll have to look that up and maybe do a deep dive and get back to you on that. Just off the top of my head, though, doesn't sound great. She'll cut red tape to make sure we build more housing faster. That's definitely something that's going to happen. In particular, there's zoning regulations that prevent anything from single-family homes being built. It's really driving up the prices of housing. This is in Canada too, so definitely need to rezone places. Basically, allow higher density, medium density. People talk about the missing middle. I think any form of density, more dense is better. Just create more housing and drive down prices there, drive down the rents. And here's something that I don't agree with. Vice President Harris knows rent is too high. Well, that's true. And will sign legislation to outlaw new forms of price fixing by corporate landlords. So that sounds pretty ominous to me. Anytime the government cracks down on market behavior, I mean, price fixing, what are they talking about there? It seems like a reference to this RealPage software that's been in the news, where landlords are like using that to figure out rental prices. And I think that's really like being scapegoated. The problem is that there's too many restrictions on building housing, so the supply is down. Well, it's probably true that the RealPage software is instructing landlords to raise prices, and landlords are benefiting from that. The reality is they're just finding the market price more effectively. There's sufficient demand at that level to maximize total revenue for the landlords. That's not the landlord's fault. You can't blame somebody for selling something at the market price. You have to ask yourself, why are there impediments to supply being increased and addressing this and bringing prices back down? And the reason is zoning, because so many towns, so many cities are zoned with massive areas where you can only have single-family homes, and that's what's really the impetus behind this high rents, is that you don't have these more dense forms of housing, 4-story walk-ups and the like, duplexes, because people are scared that it's going to bring down their property values. Moving on, we've got grow small businesses and invest in entrepreneurs. Small business is the engine of our economy. Well, small and big. There's nothing wrong with big business, but sure, small business. She has led the Biden-Harris administration's effort to increase access to capital for small businesses and bring venture capital to parts of middle America that have for too long been overlooked. And then they've got some favored lending here to black-owned businesses, to Latino and women-owned businesses. What is her proposal, though? She has set an ambitious goal of 25 million new business applications. To help achieve this, she will expand the startup expense tax deduction. Okay, this I'm in favor of, for new businesses from $5,000 to $50,000. Okay, Absolutely. Any sort of uh, tax deduction, tax credit that's non-refundable, that actually is a tax credit and not a subsidy. Uh, yeah, that sounds okay. Uh, I don't know about this this targeted to minority lending. Small. I don't know what the Small Business Administration is. I guess that's some federal loans to small businesses. I think the loan should probably be based on merit rather than the color of the skin of the people that own them. Although, uh, but yeah, the tax deduction sounds good. So at least there's one good idea in there. Taking on bad actors and bringing down costs. So here, yeah, I don't like this at all. So direct her administration to crack down on anti-competitive practices that let big corporations jack up prices. Well, the price increases of recent times were not because of corporate greed. They were because of massive increases in the money supply with record low interest rates. That's what happens when you keep interest rates so low. You're going to have inflation. Uh, I mean, I don't think the government should be telling businesses what prices they can sell their products at. So she wants to put a ban on corporate price gouging. How do you know what the real price is? How does that determine? This seems like more arbitrary power for the government to crack down on anyone. They can say anybody is price gouging if they determine the real price is actually less than companies are charging. How do you determine that? What's the objective measurement? Uh, the way the price system works is prices are supposed to fluctuate with supply and demand. If demand increases and supply stays the same, the price goes up, and that's a signal for entrepreneurs that they can profit by redirecting resources towards the production of this good, and then supply goes up and the price goes back down, and that's how the market economy works. So this attack on price gouging indicates to me a fundamental ignorance of the way that economics works, the way the economy works, the way that supply and demand works. And this is very troubling to have such blatant economic ignorance in your platform. I cannot agree with that. She wants to take on big pharma to lower drug prices and cap insulin costs, not just for seniors, but for all Americans. So here, actually, like, I would address this by simply eliminating the patent system. I think that's the way to go, and then allow for generics to compete with drugs that are under the patent system presently. That would bring the prices down dramatically. Because you have patents, which are basically like a grant of monopoly privilege, pharmaceutical companies are able to charge the monopoly price. So actually, in this limited circumstance, price controls could work in order to bring prices down toward the market level. But I think that it's the wrong approach. The proper approach would be simply to get rid of the patents and then allow for market competition. There's also issues with the FDA restricting access to drugs, like, for example, prohibiting reimportation of drugs from Canada and whatnot. And how much of that is simply regulatory boondoggle? How much of it is in the best interest of consumers, I can't say. I'm not an expert in that area. So, but uh, I imagine a lot is just regulatory nonsense. I'm not prepared to defend or make that statement. That's just my impression of the situation. So, cap insulin costs. I mean, there's already cheap insulin. It's just the newer stuff that's expensive. But again, I think it all comes down to the patent system. The patents are what drive up the prices, especially because they'll make some superficial changes and then reapply the patents. Maybe simply lowering the amount of time drugs could be under patents is sort of like a half measure that might be effective. And of course, people say, well, what about, why would pharmaceutical companies spend billions of dollars to make new drugs without the patent system? Which is a good question, but even if it's true, that those millions of dollars that would have got directed towards pharmaceutical research, even if they don't, they're going to go somewhere else into the economy. They're not going to disappear. So I don't think it's actually a problem. I don't think that pharmaceutical research is going to cease entirely if you eliminate the patent system, even if there's not as much money into it. Science is still going to continue. A lot of the work is being done by scientists who are motivated primarily by the scientific question. And maybe, who knows what'll happen. But that's my solution, is eliminate the patents and allow for free competition, deregulate the market. I think that's what we should try. Strengthen and bring down the cost of healthcare. Harris will make affordable healthcare a right, not a privilege. I object to that already. Healthcare is not a right. It cannot be a right. Nothing that requires the labor of others is a right. You don't have a right to other people's wealth or their labor or the fruits of their labor, which is the wealth. You have a right to self-ownership. You have a right to your opinion. You have a right to not be attacked by people for your opinion. You do not have a right to the product of other people's labor. That's not what a just society is founded on. Parasitism. That's what a right to somebody else's property is parasitism. That's not the world that I want to live in. So by expanding and strengthening the ACA, Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which I think was a terrible idea, simply because it forced the inclusion of pre-existing conditions, which, I mean, that defeats the whole point behind insurance. How can you get insurance for something that's already happened? That's like if your house burned down, you're like, hey, I want to get fire insurance on my house that burned down 2 days ago. Like, the whole point of pooling the risks is that in case, it's a rare event that would be devastating. So it doesn't work if you have pre-existing conditions. Now, the problem with healthcare in America really stems from artificial restrictions on supply, like certificate of need for hospitals. Like, they need to, you can't just build a hospital anywhere, and they need permission basically from other hospitals, and the lack of residencies, the lack of doctors. They're not training enough doctors. They don't build enough doctor schools, medical schools, doctor schools, because the AMA functions as a cartel, limiting the supply of doctors. So So there's a lot of artificial restrictions on supply, licensure, and sorry about that. Licensure and just simply not enough medical schools. And then there's artificial demand in the form of Medicare and Medicaid. So what happens is that drives up the price because restrictions on supply, artificial demand, high demand, low supply, price goes up. And you can see, hopefully I'll edit this in after, there's a graph. You can see how around the 70s and the 80s, healthcare costs diverged dramatically from overall inflation, and that was because of the introduction of Medicare and Medicaid, all this government money being pumped into the system, along with the restrictions on supply. So you really want to solve healthcare. You need to remove the restrictions on supply, get rid of these government programs, Medicare, Medicaid, and just have a free market in healthcare. That's how you're going to get back to the way it was. It worked very well in the early 20th century, where people would just sort of go to the doctor, they pay what they could, sliding scale based on how much money they had. Nobody got turned away, and the treatment was affordable and quite decent. The other thing is people are very critical of the American healthcare system, and it is expensive, it is overregulated, it is sort of a convoluted system where somebody else is always paying the bill, so the price is always very high. But it is, in my opinion, the best healthcare system in the world in terms of the most cutting-edge techniques, all the newest technologies developed there, and there are some of the best doctors in the world in the American system. So making permanent the Biden-Harris tax credit enhancements that are lowering healthcare premiums. I don't know the details on that, but that sounds fine. Any sort of tax credit, I'm in favor of generally, and I don't know the details on that. She'll build on the Biden-Harris administration's successes in bringing down the cost of life-saving prescription drugs for Medicare beneficiaries by extending the $35 cap on insulin. I mean, we already got into this, but I don't think price caps are the way to go. $2,000 cap on out-of-pocket spending for seniors to all Americans. The tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act gave Medicare the power to go toe-to-toe with Big Pharma and negotiate lower drug prices. Again, the way to handle pharmaceutical drug prices is eliminating patents, not having the government negotiate prices. In a market economy, you don't need the government to negotiate prices. It's supply and demand does all the work. If you have free entry into the market, if prices are too high, then a supplier is going to come in, capitalize on those high prices, the profits, bring them back down. Problem is you don't have free entry into the pharmaceutical markets because of the patent system. So just get rid of the patent system. Okay, she announced that medical debt will be removed from credit reports. I think that's fine, sort of. The other thing is, though, but so long as you make any payment on it, like you can pay like $25 a month, they're not going to default you on your medical debt. So, because like you can't really predict medical debt. It's not like, you take out a credit card and then don't pay it. Well, you knew you were going to get that expense. I mean, clearly that should go against you on your credit report, right? But if it's like, medical debt, like you're hit by a car or something, you can't predict that, and the expenses can be quite high. But at the same time, you got to pay the hospitals, you got to pay the doctors. You should have had insurance. So I don't know. I'm sort of lukewarm on that. Cancel more medical debt. I mean, I don't. I'm not. I'm sort of on the fence on that one. And okay, can combat maternal mortality. Well, I support combating maternal mortality. I don't want mothers to die. Women nationwide are dying from childbirth at higher rates than in any other developed nation. I'd like to see a citation on that. The Vice President called on states to extend Medicaid postpartum coverage for 2 months to 12. No, I don't think expanding Medicaid is the way to go. I think we need to get rid of these Medicare and Medicaid programs and just have a free market in healthcare. The problem is these programs in the first place. That's why the price of healthcare is so high, is because the government's spending so much money driving artificial demand. So protect and strengthen Social Security and Medicare. No, I disagree. Vice President Harris will protect Social Security and Medicare against relentless attacks from Donald Trump and his extreme allies. I think you got to address entitlement spending. It's by far the largest portion of the federal budget. So if you're serious about eliminating the deficit, eliminating the debt, if you're serious about fiscal responsibility, then you've got to reform medical spending, entitlement spending. Social Security is overall a transfer of wealth from the relatively poor to the relatively rich. It should definitely be reduced, curtailed, made voluntary, phased out. Maybe there was a need for it 50 or 100 years ago. I'm skeptical of that already, but certainly it's long past its time, and young people today should not be paying taxes so that wealthy old people can get handouts from the government. Absolutely need to eliminate Social Security and Medicare and have a free market in healthcare and not government programs. Support American innovation and workers. Supported more than 60,000 infrastructure projects, spurred more than 900 billion private sector. But what's the actual? I mean, this just seems like a lot of fluff. What's the actual? She'll sign landmark pro-union legislation. The last thing you need is more pro-union legislation. There's already so much pro-union legislation on the books. What they should be doing is repealing the pro-union legislation and having more of a fair fight. Like, I would like to see yellow dog contracts brought back that say, you want to work here, you can't join a union. There's just, unions really serve no useful function. They don't raise wages, okay? That's, wage increases are brought about by capital accumulation and by technological development. It's got nothing to do with the belly aching of union bosses. It's got nothing to do with strikes or lockouts or anything like that. It's the market economy making workers more productive. So unions, they're horrible, really. I mean, violent thugs. They don't do anything useful. They take credit for accomplishments that aren't theirs. No, I really dislike unions. And the last thing that we need to see is more pro-union legislation to empower them even further. What should be done is repeal a lot of the pro-union laws. She'll fight to raise the minimum wage. That is terrible. The minimum wage does not raise anybody's wages. It's purely prohibitory. All it does is make it illegal to hire low-skilled workers at a rate that is on par with their skills. So the minimum wage is a terrible, terrible policy. Price controls in general don't work, but this one in particular hurts poor people. It hurts people that need work, that are looking for work, but they don't have highly marketable skills. They don't have, they can't weld or they can't be doctors. They're just looking for entry level work, and entry level work usually doesn't pay that much. So if you raise the minimum wage to a meaningful degree, then it's going to be very difficult for some people to find work, and yeah, it's just a bad end sub minimum wage. No, it's just a bad policy. Really demonstrates the economic illiteracy of the Harris team. All right, we're almost through. There's just 4 more to go. All right, you can bear with me here. We're gonna slug it out. Provide a pathway to the middle class through quality, affordable education. Fight to ensure high-quality childcare and preschool for children. Strengthen public education and training as a pathway to the middle class. The thing is, the public education system doesn't work, and they've been increasing the funding to it in the United States in real terms, that is inflation-adjusted terms. The cost of public education has increased about 50% over the last 20, 30 years, something like that. Again, in inflation-adjusted terms. So they keep increasing the amount of money because the entropy in the system is continually increasing. Entropy meaning disorder, meaning inefficiency, meaning more administrative staff. And, schools have always been a huge boondoggle. They're always spending ridiculous amounts of money on computer software and the like. They always pay top dollar because it's the government contracting out. And at the end of the day, the results are not there. Functional illiteracy is extremely high. You have college students, first year undergraduates, they don't know how to read and write properly. They can't write an essay. The public school system is failing. It's failing because it's a government monopoly. And anytime you have a government monopoly, there's no competition, there's no incentive towards efficiency, towards cost effectiveness. So what we need is a free market in education. Private education, schools competing against each other for customers, that is students, on the basis of how well they can educate them. And, I don't know what the ideal way to educate a child is. There's probably different approaches that work for different children. But I do know that the monolithic, centralized model is inadequate, that there's no mechanism for improvement, that we could do better. Absolutely, we would do better if we had a free market education, with schools competing, with parents competing, because the ideal form of education is one-on-one tutoring. That's really the ideal system. And today, all the curriculum, all the material that needs to be taught is online. You've got like Khan Academy and more solutions being provided every year. So I think that some radical alternatives, could definitely be put in place, and would be put in place in a market economy. It will not be put in place in the socialized public education system, which serves really not to educate our children, but to promote obedience and conformity, to provide a massive make-work project for the secondhand dealers in ideas, the court intellectuals. Uh, you know, public school teachers are this massive class of university educated uh, people who who are all in the state's employ, whose very livelihoods depend upon the state continuing to flourish, to expand. And it's not a coincidence that they teach history in such a manner as to aggrandize the state and to aggrandize state institutions like public education, like regulation of the economy. For example, they teach that World War II ended the Great Depression. Um, so basically, the purpose of public education is not really to maximize the creative capacity or the intellectual ability of our students, but to promote conformity and obedience, and to instill certain attitudes with regards to statism within the general population. Basically, it's elaborate brainwashing, and it's also like a glorified babysitting service, so that both parents can go out and work and pay taxes and earn money so they can pay taxes. But it provides it serves a lot of important functions from the perspective of the state. Okay, to date, Vice President Harris. That was a little poorly formulated, but I think you get the gist. I'm ad libbing here. All right, I'm not on a script. I'm just straight from shooting from the hip. So excuse me if my delivery is not quite as polished as it could be. To date, the largest investment in public education provided nearly 170 billion in student debt relief. I don't have a strong opinion on the debt relief subject. Like, I don't know. I don't even want to get into it right now. I think I have to think about it some more. But the whole post-secondary education system is a huge scam in the first place. Like, I guess debt relief is the final curtain call of that scam. So it used to be you could just get a decent job after high school, and not everybody needed to go to college. You would because they don't really teach you in college how to do whatever job you're going to get when you get out of college. Okay, they're not. It's not vocational training, and it's not that studying history or liberal arts or philosophy is unimportant, but it is that it's unimportant for most people. Okay, so for the few that are, the 5 or 10%, 15%, whatever, that are highly inclined towards tackling and dealing with these issues, it is important that society needs philosophers, and has since the ancient Greeks. Okay, they provide a very important function, but not everybody needs to be a philosopher, and in fact, most people aren't really interested, don't really have the capacity to deal with these extremely complex subjects, and to really delve into them. So most people would be fine. Just you get out of high school, You go into the market economy, you start doing your job. And if we didn't subsidize post-secondary education, that's what would happen. But now, because we subsidize post-secondary education to such a degree, everybody can go. There's loans for anybody who wants to go. You basically have to go just to get a decent job. All the good jobs require post-secondary degrees. So what we've done is we've added this 4-year process. It doesn't accomplish anything in terms of like your personal financial goals or whatever, okay? Because if, in fact, it's a massive setback. You have to spend, $50,000, $100,000 just to get where you were before, walking out of school and into the market, into the job force, But now, if you don't spend that money, you're behind, because all the other applicants, they've got a bachelor's degree or a college diploma or whatever. So why would they hire you? Because it does serve as sort of a sorting mechanism to show who can grind it out, who can do these assignments and do a decent job of some arbitrary tasks for 4 years, stuff they don't really want to do. Just like when they get into the workforce, they're going to be able to sit there, do stuff they don't really want to do in exchange for a paycheck. So it is a signal to employers. But absent that, if it wasn't subsidized, employers could just have some other means of sorting people out. They'd be able to do that. It's not like they couldn't do that. So it's basically a massive waste of time and money for like 85% of the population. Everybody's got to go through it now, and a lot of them, they're just looking for the easiest way through it. They're partying, they're wasting a lot of money, and so what does it really accomplish? So yeah, I'm very much against the whole post-secondary situation. It shouldn't be subsidized whatsoever, and then let people who want to pursue it pursue it. But most people should be able to just leave high school, get into the workforce, get trained by their employer, and start working right away. Start contributing, to the economy. Start earning money, and not have this albatross of debt hanging around their neck. Just so they could learn about the history of 17th century France, or learn Spanish, or learn computer programming. And, we should have some vocational training, maybe, 6 months, 12 months focused courses that teach you how to do a job. That'd be fine. But the whole system, again, it's set up not really to teach people useful stuff, but to employ professors, and wannabe professors, and to employ these people in order to serve sort of as like intellectual bodyguards of the state, rationalizing the state's rule. That's why so much statist thought exists in universities. Economists, social studies teachers, the whole social sciences profession is just rationalizing government action, why the government's so important, and why we need the state. And that's the real function, is these people serve like priests did in ancient times, rationalizing the king's rule and sharing in the booty, so they get very comfortable positions, and they teach people about the importance of government and government action, which is why the academia was so hostile to Ludwig von Mises and to Murray Rothbard, despite the fact that these guys were polymaths. They produced incredible works, books that are just on the next level, like Rothbard's History of Economic Thought, or his history of money and banking in America from colonial times on up. I mean, these are just incredible pieces of scholarship completely ignored by academia because of their message of liberalism, of anti-state thought is hostile to the whole system, and because academia knows what side of the bread they're where the butter is, whatever that expression is. Invest in affordable childcare and long-term care. So we'll including expanding high-quality home care services, all while ensuring care workers are paid living wage. So more government spending, I guess. Spending on childcare, just spend seems to be the gist of the Kamala program here, blowing up the deficit. I think the solution to the childcare problem in North America. I know Canada's got a big issue too. People can't find daycare for their kids. There's millions of poor women in the third world, in Southeast Asia and Latin America, who are experts at childcare, who have been, caring for children their whole life, very competent, and willing to work for low wages, perhaps in exchange for citizenship. So I think that's the most direct solution, is to allow poor third world women to immigrate and look after children in the first world. If you're a politician, if you're Kamala Harris and you're watching this, feel free to take that idea and run with it. No need to give me credit, although a shout out would be cool. Lower energy costs and tackle the climate crisis. Note that, apparently there's a climate crisis, but they're still going to put tariffs, 100% tariffs on electric cars from China, because apparently it's not that much of a crisis. But as Attorney General, won tens of millions in settlements against big oil. Inflation Reduction Act, blah, blah, blah. Tackle the climate crisis, advances environmental justice, protects public lands and public health. I don't caught into this whole environmentalist agenda. I think that it's important to continue to transform nature from its primordial state to something that benefits man. I don't think that the rights of the sea otter or the rights of the tree trump the needs of actual living, breathing, thinking, feeling human beings. Now, that doesn't mean we should tolerate pollution, okay? Historically, the issue with pollution was the tragedy of the commons. You had the government would own the water, and so because it's owned by everybody, it's owned by the government, it's owned by us, nobody really cared for it. So private ownership is the real solution. If somebody owned the lake, they would be much more vigilant in ensuring it doesn't get polluted, because the pollution would ruin the value of the lake. Therefore, it's a direct attack on their wealth. So you got to deal with incentives here. Pollution, it's an act of aggression, needs to be dealt with criminally. So I do agree with holding polluters accountable. You can't be polluting, but the whole environmentalist idea. I mean, I think public lands should be should be privatized. Should become private lands, and then people can do with them as they please. Expanding industry, farmland, or whatever. Climate change, it's a thing. the Earth is warming, but the danger is really overstated. We've had 1 degree of warming so far, and there's been very little impact because of it. So another 1 or 2 degrees. I mean, it wasn't that long ago the Earth was like 20, 25 degrees hotter. So they say that it's the rate of change, but so far we've had 1 degree in 100 years, pretty fast rate of change, and there's been virtually zero impact in terms of anything affecting the human race as a whole, our population. If you look at deaths from climate disasters, natural disasters, they've gotten way down over the last 100 years because we're getting better at adapting. We also have, warning systems in place now because we got the satellites. So I think there's a lot of hysteria there. There is an issue. Global warming's real, and we don't want to see the oceans acidified. It does. We should be switching to cleaner forms of energy, as we are, but I don't think it's the hysterical threat to human civilization that alarmists might claim it is. Yeah, all right. I guess that sums up the Camilla's platform. Those are my opinions on it. Thank you for tuning in, and you have yourself a wonderful day.